Oh man, Brenton is the creator of the comic book Snow White Zombie Apocalypse that we're going to talk about. If you haven't seen it, go get it. It's on Kickstarter. We'll get to the links at the very end. But we're going to talk to this man, this comic book creator, and get inside your brain. And I'm sure we'll nerd out a bit. And you ready to have a little fun and have a little chit chat?
Absolutely. I'm really excited.
Well, first off, not to start on a dark note, but how are you doing? How are your loved ones doing in this world and everything we're going through in COVID and so on? How are you? How are you hunkered? How are you bunkered?
I'm doing really well, actually. I was lucky enough I moved out of Manhattan right before COVID hit.
Oh,
And it was funny because I felt like there was something coming for the city. I didn't know what it was, but we got out like right beforehand, and as a result, we've been pretty safe, which is great because my wife is high risk. So I've been you know, I've been very aggressive about like locking down and masks always, washing hands. I got one of those electric like lights, the
oh,
UV wands.
yes.
Yeah, so I've been
That's,
using that to like sanitize mail and stuff.
oh yeah, Clorox and I are a friend, but I've been wanting to go that route because it's just so less chemicals, right? Even the that UV lighting, I guess I want to try it all. I'm with you.
Absolutely,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm glad your loved ones are all safe. Everybody's good. You guys are okay.
Yeah, we're good. My son is 2, and he's happy. He was supposed to start preschool this year, and that didn't happen. But at the same time, I one of the reasons I became an artist beyond like I was just built to do that was my father when I was young was working quite a lot, and I sort of got it internalized into my head that's kind of that like 9 to 5 job was just not a great way to live. And so I wanted to make sure to be there for my son. And thanks to COVID and the people that support Swaza and some of my other work, that's been positive. It's been possible. And yeah, so in a lot of ways, in a funny way, I think I was uniquely set up to weather COVID. So I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, a lot of the comic book creators I create to aren't built for the 9 to 5, the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to dip my toes in there with you, so I completely understand. So yeah, you're way better equipped, and that you're a creator, you're an artist, right? To just being hunkered down in your basement or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it would have been bad if I was still in Harlem where I used to live, just because I love New York City. It's great to get out of New York City, but like in my building, just we're just stacked on top of each other like sardines,
Yeah,
and so like my whole apartment like could probably fit inside my living room now. So like even if you tried to social distance in New York, even if you tried to avoid the stuff with the lockdowns, like there's a reason it spread so fast in New York, and it's because of how the city is set up.
yeah. I hope and pray all gets better. I'll take
Me
5
too.
of the vaccines. Just give me a 6 pack of them. I'll take them every week or whatever. My wife's a nurse, so
Hmm.
she's a frontline worker, and so yeah, and I've been laid off for a good amount of time, and so working more on my comics. So yeah, I hope you guys stay healthy, stay well, and I'm glad to hear that. That's a lot of people are being affected in crazy negative ways. So I'm good that all is well with you, man. So tell me a little bit about yourself. We've never met physically, so I'd love to know like a little bit about where you're from. You lived your whole life on the East Coast. That kind of where you're from, New York, born and bred.
Um, so I'm actually a military brat. I was born in Naples, Italy,
Hmm.
and raised my first 2 years of my life in Catania, Sicily. And then my father was an officer in the U.S. Navy. And then we moved to the United States, and he went into civilian life, and we moved around a lot. We were in Pennsylvania, then Northern Virginia, then Kentucky, then I lived in Ohio to Kentucky again, and then I hiked the Appalachian Trail, Maine to Georgia, and then moved to New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
And moved to
So,
New York City when you were in your early 20s. And
mid to late 20s. Yeah, so let me see. So I went to the University of Kentucky and got a degree in theater. And while I had a theatrical, like I was supposed to work on a play this one summer, and the job fell through. And so what I decided to do was hike the Appalachian Trail. So I did the first 600 miles of the AT in 2006. My dad dropped me off like just south of Waynesboro, or I'm sorry, just south of Gatlinburg, and I walked north for 54 days to Waynesboro, Virginia, a little over 600 miles. At
Wow.
which point I called my mom and said, "Mom, I'm not going back to college. I'm going to stay and finish the Appalachian Trail." She said, "Absolutely not." So I went back. I finished my last year in college and worked as kind of a small time actor in and around the Midwest, especially out of like right around Cincinnati. I was in a play called Tecumseh out of Chillicothe, Ohio, which was amazing. Really a lot of fun. Best summer job I've had in quite some time. And then that ended, and I wound up working at a rock and roll and sketch comedy dinner theater in Cincinnati.
That,
It was
wow.
like SNL, but it wasn't funny, and we said the F word a lot. So it was like
That,
SNL, but we said the F word a lot.
that absolutely sounds like a crazy blast. You should do a comic of that.
You know, I wrote a series, a comedy series called Dinner and a Show, and I could totally adapt that into a comic now. I just realized. So yeah, maybe that'll
Right?
be my
So
next project.
consider me
But
a
yeah,
co-writer or a consultant. I could give you info. I worked at the Improv for a very long time, and so we had a little
oh, great.
similar.
So you
Yeah,
also have a theatrical background. Yeah, that's wonderful. Anyway, yeah. So I was, and it's interesting because we were talking beforehand. You were talking about difficulties in your life and driving your creativity, and like so what happened was I was about a year into a contract with this dinner theater, and a really dear friend of mine, like I had been the guy from the crappy town we'd been living in Kentucky. Um, I'd been the guy who went off to be the big time professional artist, and he stayed back in this town to sort of mentor the next generation of freaks that we had, even at a writers group called the Shadow Scribes. And I heard that he passed away in his sleep at like 25 years of age,
oh,
5 days before I turned 25, and this thing just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that happens to you at that age. What are you going to go do a musical? So
yeah.
I went to my bosses and I was like, my friend is dead. I am out of my mind at the moment, and I feel like I really need to finish the Appalachian Trail. So, can I have a sabbatical? And I'll come back and finish out my contract once this is done. And they said, we hate to see you go, but we don't want to keep you here. So they gave me the sabbatical, and started hiking from Waynesboro, Virginia in May of 2008. So I went from Waynesboro all the way up to Katahdin in Maine. I summited in August, then went down to the old town. I started as John Proctor in a local production of The Crucible, and then the woman who would eventually become my wife drove me down to finish the last 300 miles of the AT, and I hiked Hot Springs, North Carolina, all the way down to Springer Mountain in Georgia, and
Wow.
finished it up. Yeah. So yeah, I did that. I got to the end of it. I was like, well, I'm not afraid of anything anymore. Time to move to New York. And so in 2009, I got off the train in Manhattan and found an apartment, and lived there until very very recently up in Harlem.
Wow. How do you feel that a theater background, theater in school was your focus, and then this journey you went on, this like a spirit journey, this whatever you want to call it, this pilgrimage, this
Yeah.
to the Appalachian Trail. How did that directly, those two things like directly affect your writing?
Oh, they definitely both directly affected my writing. I mean, as did. So I was a weird case because I started out. The biggest artistic influence on me was probably Bill Watterson. And in fact, I started out wanting to be like a syndicated cartoonist. And so I was drawing cartoons from the time I was in like the third or fourth grade. I had my own strips starting in the fifth grade. I even had comics carried in my college paper. And I did a web comic called The Life Quixotic for a couple of years until I started to get professional acting work and just couldn't keep it up. In college, I was like, well, I was looking at the prospects of syndicated cartoonists, and I was like, you know what, this isn't practical. I got to do something more practical. I know, I'll become an actor.
Totally.
Yeah, so I went to, I went and I started studying to be an actor, but I didn't really fit in the department because, like, I wasn't a theater kid. I was a guy who wanted to do theater, but like that was also partially because that they didn't teach film at UK when I was there. So I went into the department and I even created a comic book while I was in the department called Ninja Roommate that I drew and wrote and published at Kinko's myself, and actually got it carried in some of the local shops.
Cool.
You might still find an issue if you like dig through like A+ comics in Lexington, Kentucky. I think they may still have like an old issue sitting there for like 10 years. Um, yeah, but anyway, so I didn't 100% fit in. I was really big on. I remember I did a lot of martial arts too, and like the Shaolin Warriors came to UK and put on like a big show. And so for months after the words, I wouldn't shut up about how we needed to do a kung fu play, and yeah, and everybody was like, "Yeah, okay, you're weird, and I don't like you. Go away."
We connected on another level. I'm like a huge Bruce Lee fan. I studied Jeet Kune Do. I've read all of his books. I
Yeah, I'm
even have.
seeing the you've got the figure in the background right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. The import, Japanese import.
Hmm.
Surprisingly expensive for such a small figure, but yeah, very very articulate. I love it. But yeah, huge Bruce Lee fan, and even yeah, when I was young, I studied martial arts as well. So I'm with you. There's a discipline, there's a peace, there's an inner strength that comes from it, right? Did you get all that, of course, from all of your trainings?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The styles that I do, and yeah, I'm sure you noticed in the first issue, like Rapunzel is patterned and as fighting after Bruce Lee. She does the 1 inch. Yeah, yeah, she does the 1 inch punch. She says "wata." Like
100.
here,
Brenton, that's one of the many reasons I gravitated to Snow White Zombie Apocalypse is because you did that little treatment, that little homage, little 1 inch punch page. Loved it, and I immediately just, oh yes, you're holding it up, fantastic. Uh, yeah, I giggled and was immediately on your side. Like from that moment, you got me. So like, it doesn't matter what you do from here on out. I'm gonna be a fan. But influences like comics. Do you remember what like your first traditional floppy comic read was, and what kind of impact it had on you?
I don't. I had a lot of floppy comics. I didn't collect as a kid. My parents would go to like BJ's and pick up like that big just pack of wholesale comics that were just completely disentangled. So I remember one of the comics from my youth that I remember really well was a 64. I think it might have even been a 64 page. They were trying to launch the new Captain Marvel Legacy, and it was. Legacy and the Silver Surfer and Ronan the Accuser. And I remember freaking out because there was side boob in the comic, and I had to show it to my mom because I was so disturbed. Not that I was disturbed by the. I wasn't disturbed by the side boob. I was afraid I'd get in trouble for having a comic with side boob. So I'm like, get it. There's side boob in this. Get ahead of it.
Was your mom that way? Was she censoring, going through pages of all your stuff and was like, page 9, some side boob, but you just thought in your head, you got inside your own head, and were like,
Yeah.
mom's gonna find this. I might as well just come clean.
Yeah, exactly. That's how that went. She
Right.
wasn't too much of a snooper, but she was pretty strict. So I don't know if I was heavily influenced by any of those comics. I can only feel pleasure when I look at side boob now, but no.
Anyway.
Yeah, but what I was really influenced by was Wendy Pinney's Elf Quest. Wendy and Richard Pinney.
Okay.
Their Elf Quest, I don't think was being released in serialized format for quite a while I was young. They've been doing it for years and years. I think they're still doing it.
Some hefty hardbound, some hefty hardcovers of ElfQuest, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so like the library, the local library where I was, they had all of these huge ElfQuest trades. And me and my next door neighbor, we would check them out, and we'd like fight over who got the next one, and then we would either read them together or separately, and then come back and talk about it and play ElfQuest in the woods, you know.
That's that
So
far.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm a giant nerd, and so like that I think, as far as comics, Bill Watterson, Wendy and Richard Pinney had a huge influence on me. In college, I wound up being really influenced by Robert Kirkman, actually. Might be one of the reasons why I chose to write about zombies, because he was a native of Lexington. And in fact, I met him right at the beginning, like when Walking Dead was first starting to take off.
Nice.
Yeah, he was signing at A Plus Comics in Lexington, and I came in and I brought one copy of the reprint of Battle Pope, one copy of my early, I think it was like Invincible #7, and I also brought like I have like all the original Walking Dead comics, and so I brought in, it might have been like Walking Dead #1 or something, and he signed them, and then he looked at me and he's like, "There's only 3 comics. Do you have any more?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do, but I didn't want to bother you." And he's like, "No, go get them." So I drove to my apartment, grabbed like a giant box of comics, went back, and he signed like every one of them.
Awesome.
Yeah, comics trades. He was really cool about that. So I think honestly his work has probably had a lot of impact on me, though I encountered it, of course, much later in my life. It's funny,
Okay.
he's published 2 of my letters, actually, one in the reprint of Battle Pope and one in Walking Dead, I think #22.
Oh, I'm gonna look them up because I got them all too. So I'll check those out.
Yeah, there's one.
Definitely. Well,
I'll
you and I.
confirm the number that it was, but I gave him my zombie plan to escape Lexington in the event of a zombie plague.
Nice. I'll check my battle popes. Double check your Walking Dead. Let me know, and I'll definitely look it up because yeah, I have all the floppies too. You and I have Kirkman in common. I've met him a few times at some cons, and I had a short interview with him here on the podcast years back, and yeah, my comic book is a zombie comic book too that I'm working on called Zombie Destroyer. So I feel yeah, I think it's influenced my writing as well. But going back to the unfortunate negative event you had in your life with your 25-year-old friend. And it did inspire you. What were flip it for me, and like what was maybe something positive you remember that really has kind of always stuck with you, that's given you that influence and that drive.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it was a huge thing. Like, his name was Adam, and he was one of my first friends. I had spent a year in boarding school, like in a pretty ritzy all boys boarding school. And when I left, I was worried that I'd lost the ability to make friends, because I was somebody that had always made friends very easily, and I felt like I had no friends at that school. So when I met up with Adam, he was my first one. That was really important. And so when he passed away, one of the things that threw me for a loop was just like, I really see his death as one of the major catalyzing moments of my life. And it also inspired directly one of my most important artistic projects right now, which is I'm working on started out as a play, that became a screenplay, now it's a novel, but it's called After All, and it is the collaboration between myself and Rogue, the lead singer of a band called the Crew Shadows, which you may or may not have heard of. If you've ever been to Dragon Con, you've heard of them. And I've been with them. That's one of the things that COVID is made so difficult, because they had to cancel Dragon Con this year. But yeah, Rogue, the Crew Shadows are, imagine like Lady Gaga, but Lady Gaga's a guy fronting a mostly girl goth band and singing about angels and Greek mythology. Like, that's Crew Shadows. Yeah.
Combo. I like picturing that. Great stuff.
Yeah, and they actually they managed to beat out Madonna and Beyonce for the #1 dance hit in the world. And like, Rogue's a total genius, and I was lucky enough to wind up to be able to collaborate with him, because when my friend Adam died, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to write a fantasy story set in the afterlife that was starring him, you know? And so I that was my whole idea, that to write this story that begins when the main character dies. And so yeah, I wrote that first as a play, and I had encountered Rogue and the Crew Shadows some years before and had been really inspired by their music. And so I met Rogue when they were touring through Cincinnati, at this little goth club they went through. And after the show, he walked into the audience, and he's very gracious and very approachable, and just pre-COVID. So like he walked into the audience, and I eventually made my way and pushed through the crowd to go talk to him. And I was like, your music has been really influential on me, and because of it, I've been able to hike the Appalachian Trail, and I'm about to move to New York City and all this stuff. And he put his arm on my shoulder. He goes, "Cool, write a play, put us in it." And my brain was just like. And so 2 years later, I had written this story starring my dead friend as a play. And I realized when I first started writing it, I was like, this has to be a musical because no one will ever accept a fantasy play. Theater's too serious for that. But music warps reality to a certain extent. So, altogether, I took that and I used the Crew Shadows music as placeholders until I could find someone to collaborate with. And then it just worked really well. And so I emailed Rogue and I was like, hey, so 2 years ago, you put your arm on my shoulder and you said, write a play, put us in. And I did, here it is. Um, and I halfway expected to get a like cease and desist immediately, but no, he was just like, that's really cool. And he read it and then was like, I like it, but I want some changes. And the two of us had been collaborating off and on since then, and the projects continue to morph and change. And we actually changed the gender of the protagonist, but it's still like it's very much still heavily based on my friend, and I think he'd be cool with where we're going with it. Yeah, so we're finishing the script for that directly, and that aside from Snow White Zombie, and I also wrote a play called North Maine, which is the first play ever about the Appalachian Trail, which is sponsored by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Like those are the three big creative achievements of my life so far, and all three of them are directly related to my response to my friend's death.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, Adam's shining, looking down on you and smiling because, and to turn that tragedy into such beautiful art, and that's great. And how you use your theater background as well, and that's all beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing that. That's just beautiful. So we
Yeah.
got the negative and the positive. How about a weird situation, weird story, something strange? I love these that happened in your life that stuck with you, and no matter what you do, it's just kind of sticking with you like luggage. What's the weird algae strange story in your life?
Weird algae strange story. Let me think. Oh, okay. This one is the weirdest thing. I'm hoping something should come of this very soon. So, all right. One of the side careers I have is as a professional wilderness guide. And so, like, people have paid me to take them to Iceland and like, help them hike through the Icelandic wilderness along the Lagavegr Trail. It's like 4 days through Iceland. It's really cool. And it's a great way to adapt my experience as a through hiker. Um, so doing this sort of international adventure guided trips, I've spent a lot of time in Iceland, and I'm a huge fan of the country. Well, one of the days I was there, and I saw in like a shop this was my first trip. I saw in a shop that there was like it looked like they were selling wolf skins. I think it might have been fox, but to me, my brain was like, that's a wolf skin. And I came home after the trip, and I'm sitting there drinking out of like a ram's horn beer stein that I bought. I'm wearing like an Iceland shirt. I had a Viking necklace on,
Drank all
and
the
like
you were all in.
I was so happy. I mean, Iceland, like literally, you ever want to see a fantasy landscape, that's it.
It's the rings, right? Like the world. It's just like it's
Yeah,
fantasy. It's Tolkien.
it's the country that inspired Tolkien. In fact, there's a spot on Lagavegr where there's a joke sign where it's like got the sign of the real places, and then like a sign points off this way, and it's like Mordor.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, like I had gotten back and I was all in, and I was talking to my girlfriend, soon to be my wife, and I was a little drunk, and I'm just like, yeah, there were these freaking wolf skins. And she's like, well, how did you feel about that? And I'm like, I think I want one. She looks at me and she's like, Brent, you can't have a wolf skin. The Sierra Club will get so mad at you. I know, because they keep sending me these pictures of freaking of like bloody wolves in the snow. And I was just like, oh no, honey, let's. And I proceeded to improvise a monologue that I imagined I was talking to the head of the Sierra Club. And I improvised a monologue as to why I should be allowed to have this wolf skin. And
Oh,
it started off with like, Sierra Club, Sierra Club, Sierra Club. You like wolves. I could tell because you keep sending me pictures of bloody wolves in the mail. Those pictures are badass, Sierra Club, because they contain blood and also wolves, and blood is badass, and wolves are badass, and especially when the blood is on a wolf and in the snow. So I guess what I'm saying is, thank you for the picture. I put it on the wall with my other wolf photos, and yeah. So I went on from there. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
You're inspired by something they had no intention of inspiring you, but you just saw it. That's just metal. It just rocks.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm gonna hang
yeah.
it on the wall.
So this gets weirder, by the way. So
Great.
I, I have fun with it with my wife, and I go to work the next day, and I'm sitting in the office, and I'm a little hungover, and but I'm still laughing about this and kind of giggling, and so I sit down on Facebook and I write out the entire thing in a giant Facebook post,
Oh,
and I'm
Jesus.
just like, should I put this on the Sierra Club's wall? Yes.
Right.
So I put it on their wall to see how they're going to react.
Oh,
And it was only shortly thereafter that I went to Dragon Con because I was reading parts of the After All. That's the name of the play turned novel. That I was reading with the Crew Shadows as like an official event there, which is so cool. It's like up there on the same stage as like best-selling New York Times authors, sitting next to idol rock star. And so I'm sitting there and I'm at Dragon Con, everything's going great. And I get this email. Now, what's important to know is the end of the thing where I had the whole thing basically revolved around me asking the Sierra Club if I could fist fight a wolf so I could deserve another wolf's skin. Um, and I ended it with like, please phrase your response in the form of a howl.
oh,
I get an email. It's from the Sierra Club. And the first line is, "Ow!"
nice.
Yeah, and they're like, "We love this. Can we, you put it on our wall, so it's like it's our property now, probably. But we would like to make this into a fundraising video. Can we put you in touch with a filmmaker?" And I'm
Wow.
like, "Yeah, that sounds
Oh,
great, please." And I'm expecting it's going to be like some AV guy named Chet, and he wears like a checkered print like flannel jackets, and I'm looking forward to meeting Chet. In my mind, Chet already has like kind of red blonde hair and stuff. But I get an email actually, and the email starts off and it's like, okay, so I'm in Canada shooting a tar sands documentary with Leonardo DiCaprio. And Michael Brune, the head of the entire Sierra Club, just busts into my tent. No introduction. And like, he just launches into your monologue. And halfway through, we're laughing so hard we're crying. My name is Henry Joost. I'm the director of such films as like Catfish and Paranormal Activity 3. And I want to make this into a short film for the Sierra Club.
wow.
And I'm just like, this is freaking incredible. It sounds
Yeah,
great. Let's do this.
dream come true.
Yeah. So that's been kicking around for a while. It's the craziest thing that like because I got drunk and joked about wolves and posted it on the Sierra Club's wall. I got an opportunity to meet this really cool guy. And I'm hoping. The project sadly got delayed. It took a little while because they got a film greenlit, and then right before we were going to move on it, Donald Trump got into office, and so like they were like, yeah, we can't be funny. We got to be serious now for a while. So who knows? But I'm really hoping that one day soon that my insane monologue will be made into a fundraiser for the Sierra Club to benefit wolves.
Oh my gosh, that's a great story, man. How funny that that's turned into something from a drunk fun night to where it's grown to. Like that's great, man. That's good luck. I hope that comes into fruition. I hope it happens. And you can keep on telling this strange story. I'd love to see where that goes. That needs to just go all the way to multiple movies and TV series rights, and it never ends for you. That would be amazing.
That would really be incredible. And it's funny too, because like I actually really liked the character that I came up with that, because there's like a guy who was just like really into wolves but didn't totally get society, but was just so excited to fist fight a wolf so he could deserve another wolf's skin.
That's also a comic in itself. You need to just start doing that as well. It's a beautiful idea for a comic. I can see that positive, a guy. I mean, yeah, I see your face right now, but
Yeah.
but you're right. Just the naivete, right? You see the world through the lens of this really positive natured person that's excited about one particular thing. Yeah, it's writing itself, man. You need to do a comic for that as well.
I will talk to the folks at Scout and maybe Henry and Ariel and hopefully the Sierra Club, and heck, we could release it as a comic form. That's a great idea.
Beautiful title. The title could be just you can title it "Ow," or just that's just working title.
Working title. Ow. Okay, yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, I'm telling my agent about this tomorrow, actually.
Do it and just put me in the comic is all I ask. That's a bucket list for me. Just take my likeness and put me in there. I could be killed by something, whatever.
Yeah,
That's
we
all
can
I
do
want.
that. I'll put that in there for giving me that idea. I will make you an extra in that comic.
Awesome.
Which, by the way, people can actually pay to be an extra in Swaza. It's one of the benefits on our Kickstarter, which is currently running, which I probably should have brought up much longer before now.
No, I'll lead you in there. Before we jump into Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which everyone should get immediately, that's Brenton's comic. What are you reading now? What are you into? What are you reading currently in comics, anyway?
In comics, the most recent comic I read was I don't know when it was published, but it was a prequel to the Elric series. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who did it, but you know the Michael Moorcock Elric books.
Yes, I haven't read any of them, but I know of them. Yes.
Yeah, so I'd been wanting to read Elric for quite a while because he kept coming up. Neil Gaiman is my favorite writer,
Okay.
and he, I believe, mentioned Elric in one of his short stories, and so I was like, "What the heck is this?" And I found out, it's albino with an intelligent black sword and stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I need to see this."
Right.
And so I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I really want to get back into reading fantasy. See if the library has any Elric books, and they didn't. But they had these two incredible graphic novels, and I hate it that I'm blanking on the artist's name because he did it really well. And there are these two great prequel novels to the rest of the Elric series, and one of the things that I love about it is they're so short, but they manage to compress so much into so few pages with some absolutely incredible art. And it really shows you like just one of the real strengths of comics, if you really know what you're doing, is to be able to tell that kind of large, sprawling story in like two trades that are like this.
Do they spend in Elric? I'm curious because maybe I'll read it. Do they do a lot of sort of describing as to what's happening? Is it heavy text or is it no? They're really art driven and you can see what's happening there.
Heavily art driven. Yeah,
Fantastic.
and it drops you in media res. There's not a lot of exposition, but you figure it out. And me, being only vaguely familiar with Elric and like having never read a book in the series, I still really enjoyed them, and I was able to figure out what was going on. So, yeah, I'd say that's my most recent thing that I have read as far as like new comics goes. I've also been reading like a lot of my fellow Scout creators. Their books have popped up because I've backed their Kickstarters and stuff.
Yeah.
Charlie Stickney, his White Ash, I backed, and I've read that recently.
What is the comic, the Scout comic that is the a young woman that is going against the sort of the mythological gods and there's sort of Zeus and she's a young woman and that's one that I've been enjoying. And I can't remember.
I think that's a fairly new one, if I'm not mistaken. That there's a lot of Scout titles, so I haven't read that one. Yeah, do you know the artist's name?
I'm doing a bad job at remembering the artist of the name, though,
Yeah, both of us are.
but
We're gonna get yelled at after
yeah,
this.
Scout's gonna call us. What are you guys doing? Uh, but anyway, thank you, Scout, and I'll figure it out and I'll give you a plug. But let's jump into Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. 52 pages is issue number one, and this cover is gorgeous. The original cover is probably my favorite. Artist Hyundo Park. Did I get
Yep,
that close?
yep, you did.
Tell me about the assembly of the team. How did you Avengers assemble this team together? Because it's hitting on all cylinders, which is very hard to do in comics. How did you gather them, and did you handpick them? Just kind of tell me what you did there to get them.
So this was an interesting experience because it was I met Hyando in the way that I'm most comfortable with functioning within art, which is friend of a friend recommendations. I had met another comic creator. This was before I was strictly a theater guy at this point, but I loved comics and had the idea that I wanted to do Snow White Zombie as a comic because it was a play first. Um, and so my wife bought me tickets for my birthday to see Neil Gaiman at BAM in Brooklyn.
Oh,
And waiting 3 hours in the line
oh,
to get Neil Gaiman's autograph, um, the guy and his wife, who happened to be next to me, were comic creators themselves. And so I kind of was like, oh, how do you do that? And he was like kind enough to talk me through the process and of how to go about pitching a comic. And he kind of opened up his Rolodex and sent me like 10 different people that he knew that I might work with. And one of them was Hyando. And Hyando, I saw his art and it was phenomenal. And I was really intimidated actually because it was so good. But yeah, he agreed to work with me on it, and we produced the first Snow White Zombie. So Hyando created the cover and 7 continuous pages of black and white art. You can see through here, now colored by Geo Butler, our colorist. And I put that into a pitch packet along with, positive reviews of the play, a script for issue number 1, and then a outline of the whole series. And I pitched that to a number of companies, Image, Dark Horse, and I also took 11 packets to New York Comic Con. And I went through and I pitched IDW, I pitched a number of others. I don't know how many of them actually even bothered to read the pitch. I have a feeling a lot of it just went in the circular file. Um, but when I went to, I was like, had like 3 left, and I was just looking around, and I saw a booth and I just noticed that the artists at the booth were sketching, and I was like, oh. So I went over and I'm like, hey, are you guys a comic company? And they're like, yeah, we're Scout. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, would you be interested in this? And they looked at it and they were just like, holy shit. And so they were like, oh, you got to talk to our boss. And they introduced me to the CEO of Scout Comics, Brendan Deneen. And he looked at it and about 5 seconds in was just like, I want it. I love that. I mean, just look at the cover. It'll go right off the shelves. And so, after having an interview with him and some other comic companies and fielding a couple of pitches, I really liked Brendan's energy and how quickly he had responded, and the fact that he just even took the time to look at it when almost nobody would. And so, like, yeah, that's why I signed with Scout for the most part. Like,
that's
and
cool.
so yeah, that's sort of where the team came together from there. And then David Byrne did Scout production for it. And Geo Butler was a referral from another Scout artist. So, because Kyando's excellent artist and he can do color just as well, but we wanted to get the book out in a certain amount of time, and so we were like, just focus on the ink, and we'll get somebody else to do the color, and that's when we brought in Geo. Hyando also did all the lettering for this book, which and I really like his lettering in it.
Oh,
So
I'm a stickler for coloring and I'm a stickler for lettering. And did Geo do any of the texturizing, or was that all Hyundo?
the texturizing, you mean the like
In the
the
part of it, say like in the trees, like in page 1, how yeah, the purpling has the line effect. Was that all Hyundo, or did Geo come in and do some texturizing of the?
the line effect is all Hyando.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. He actually, this book got nominated for 2 Ringo Awards this past year, and I think a lot of that is Hyando, but it was for best inking, which Hyando was nominated for, and we also had best production and design.
Awesome. On page 1, when the lettering shows the musical, the note grid in the back, I was already locked in. And then if you look at that tree at the panel one, page one, where there's little speckles of like it looks like a sort of larvae of some sort, or just the attention to detail there, I just said I'm already in. It
Yeah.
hooked from the beginning. So if you haven't read this, listeners, read Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. You're gonna enjoy it. Where did this premise come from? Like, where did it? What was the birth of it?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, but hold on. There's something that I did want to point out to you, because you mentioned about like Hyundo's specificity and whatnot. So one of the things you can get in the Kickstarter, I have Swaza posters that you can order and add on. But like, this is also this poster's taken from like the last page of issue 1, and I had looked at this page so many times. It's one of my favorite pages in the whole thing. When I got the poster size delivered to me, I noticed work in this that I had missed every other time. Hyundo is absolutely an incredible artist, and I was just so incredibly lucky to work with him and to continue to have a relationship with him. And so, like, yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Now, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Do whatever you got to do to keep Hyundo on the payroll. Trust me. I mean, even the basket that I'm looking at, like sort of page two, there's just sort of textural element there that at the bottom of the basket, there's just little tiny little details that if you are a hardcore comics fan, you will pay attention and slow down and look at things here. There's some magnificent work being done. And did you? I love the panel design. I think that
Mhm.
most of comics nowadays, to me, is how the layouts and the panel designs are put together. Were you real hands on with that, or were you hey Hyondo, go nuts, do your thing?
We both. I think we both had kind of a push and pull with regard to that. If you read my original script with it, I'm very specific about panel designs and what's going to appear in there. In there, you know, and but also I gave Hyundo the freedom to be like, I was like, look, you're the artist here. You understand design in a way that I don't. You know, I have a pretty good idea of like how a page should look, but if you can think of something better than what I've given you, you know, just do that. A really good example actually would be we also turned this into a poster later on, but this bit here, and as you can see, this is Rapunzel's story when she's going into her doing her monologue in her background,
Yeah.
and she's talking about how her hair got cut. Um, so if you read my original script, I actually had this that, you know, she's up kind of stroking her hair almost like it's a phantom limb. And what I wanted was I had written in the script that it was a 2-page spread, and we were seeing her memories in her hair as the hair wrapped through the page as like almost ghost hair. Like that was my idea.
Yeah.
And Hyundo took that, and I think he did something way better with it, because Rapunzel, the character, is Spanish Moroccan. And so, like, he went and took the really incredible, I forget exactly what the term is for this kind of art, but you see it in a lot of Muslim buildings. Where it's kind of like they use tile to make these like abstract patterns.
Wow.
Yeah, and that is what. So it looks like stained glass, and so he's paying homage to like freaking Beauty and the Beast, but he's also it's a layer in her character background, and then to see that crumble in the bottom like right corner as she finishes her story and is pulled back to reality, I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
that's way better than what I was thinking with. That's better than Ghost Hair.
I don't know. Ghost hair is also awesome.
Yeah.
In my mind's eye, I can see what you meant to do with that and how the hair would be weaving the memories. They're both pretty solid. And you're saying there's a poster of that particular page?
Indeed, there is. That's available in the thing. It's a poster, so it's 17 by 11, and all of the basically it's this just with all the dialogue taken out, and it's Rapunzel's story, and it's one of the 6 posters that we have available on the Kickstarter.
Oops, I just accidentally sent you my address. I don't know. It just came through. I was just also I love the it's around page 34
Mhm.
where he weaves the action. This is action packed. It's gruesome, gory fun.
Yeah.
Kill Bill comes to mind into my head. Of course, the Bruce Lee homage in there. It doesn't strike me as for some reason I don't feel like it's grotesque, but it's action based sort of goriness. But when he does that large tree, it's another sort of 2-page
Mhm.
layout again. with the tree and the actions weaved in between the tree. Was that your concept? Is that Hyundo's?
If I recall, the tree. I would have to look back in the script. My memory is that I suggested the tree, though he
Yeah.
did a really incredible thing where he had, and this is the panel we're talking about, where he has.
One of my
This is definitely his idea of putting her like she's growing out of the tree almost.
Yes, and they're panel cuts. You use the tree as sort of panel separations because there's different action going on. Home run. That is there a poster of that particular page?
There is a poster of this as well.
Whoops, I accidentally sent you my address again. I don't know what happened. It's just weird that it keeps happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this bit here also, it's interesting how it went from the stage to the comic, because this bit here was in the original play, essentially like what we had was Snow White saying each of the names and getting more horrified as Rapunzel reenacts like each of the deaths, like she mimes it. But it was like really funny. So like this was one of the moments where like when she's just like, originally I had used like don't tell Disney, but originally it had been like the normal seven dwarves names, and then people pointed out that I needed to change them. So like instead of Alvis, it was Doc, and Rapunzel
Right.
tears his head off. So like
Love it.
people were absolutely losing it, and in the translation, this actually like Hyundo actually played up the horror of the moment a little bit more than the comedy, and I think it works really well. But it also shows how the distance from the violence, where you're seeing people recount the story about it on stage, is funny, but to actually see the violence,
Right.
suddenly it becomes horrifying.
Right. And the humor in this, I was just really surprised with. Uh, where's that coming from you? Like, what are some of the comic influences that influence Snow White Zombie Apocalypse? Like, where was your headspace at when you're thinking of some of the humor here?
So this actually goes back to something that I learned in college. So in college, we studied a style of French theater called the Grand Guignol style of theater, and it's actually puppet theater primarily. But this was done, like I don't know, maybe 1700s in France or early 1900s. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember the period, but the way it worked was that they would do a night of short plays, and each play would either be comedy or horror, and they would usually like they'd start with horror and then do comedy and then go back to horror and then do comedy and then go back to horror. And so what it did was the comedy made the horror more terrifying, and the horror in turn made the laughs even bigger in comedy because you needed to release the tension from being terrified.
That's
So
unique. You can tell there's a delivery, there's a pace, right? That
mhm.
really did a really good job of capturing it. Thank you for breaking that down as far as where that came from. That's very cool.
Yeah. So that's been my philosophy towards the comedy of this. Like one of the big things I've always been big on with all my collaborators is that the character. This is not a jokey book. It's a funny book, and there are jokes in it, even jokes that the characters are aware of. But the humor is it's a very serious life and death struggle for them. And then the humor just comes with us reading it and realizing how ridiculous the situation is.
Yeah, it's like a kick-ass action. It's like a kick action, we can call it. We'll make
Kick action.
it.
Patented.
There you go. We locking that one down. But I mean, man, and issue number 2 is officially out. Did it get as large of a page treatment as issue 1? Because 52 was like a double bonus. Did 2 go that long?
No. So basically, one of the concepts for this, and you were talking about my inspiration, and this won't surprise you at all, but big influence on this series is Sandman. Um, and so one of the things that I wanted to do with it is, if you know, Sandman changes artists every so often because dreams are weird. And similarly, fairy tales are weird. So it's been a concept from the beginning that this would be a series that was created by several artists, sort of linked by a general style and a through line. and my new artist Luana Vecchio, who I discovered on Twitter, by the way. I just was looking around and I saw her work on another thing called Lovesick, and she's also worked with Image Comics. I reached out to her and was like, "Hey, I need somebody to follow Hyondo. I'm really intimidated as to who can follow him, but I think you can do it. Would you be interested in coming on and doing the next few issues?" And she absolutely was. And to fund it, I ran a Kickstarter. Um, so originally I was kind of like, do I do 22 pages? Do I do 44? It was going to be another 44 pages, and that would be Luana's issue. But then I realized while writing it, I'm basing it on section. So like the full length play is 2 hours and can be separated into a number of large beats and acts. So the 44 pages covers the events of about the first 15 minutes of the play. And then there's a natural break because that's the first 10-minute play that I wrote plus the fight sequence. Then this period that Luana is writing, this carries over from immediately after, and we discussed like the rise of the zombie plague and how everything happened, a little bit of the backstory. We meet the woodsman, who is
Love the woodsman character. I also really love the angry green giant slash swamp monster thing. I just love it all, and I love how it's just sort of hinted upon, and then in the sort of ashcan, which is the ashcan sort of, I mean, conceptual wise, it's on its own. Is that introducing issue 3, or is that just a standalone ashcan of sort of the angry green giants, the sort of what happened to them?
Origin.
Yeah.
So this actually is the Reign of the Blood-Covered King. This is the first. There's going to be a second one of these at least. This was created as a prequel to Swaza because we overfunded on our first one. And so people were asking, and I said, yeah, okay, I'll do a prequel. I had no idea what I was going to come up with. It's kind of a balancing act here. But I had the idea to introduce Jack the Giant Slayer, and I tied him in with the brave little tailor kind of fairy tale. Everything that you see in Swaza, by the way, you can tie down to one fairy tale or another. And so, I wanted to give background on the giant, but Jack will show up later in the series, and I may spin him off into his own series because I really liked kind of what happens with him, and his stuff is gonna get weirder and weirder as it goes.
I'm in. I need more of that. That is good news.
Yeah. I liked exploring Prince Charming's past, and also his father, the blood-covered king, who, by the way, canonically sounds exactly like Tyrion Lannister. Or not Tyrion Lannister, Tywin Lannister.
Right. Tywin Lannisters.
Yeah.
That's I love. I just love the 7-in-1 character and Jack, and how that the exchange. I don't want to spoil anything. You know me from Sunspots Comics. I don't spoil stuff. You guys got to read this. But I just love the sort of unexpected story of Jack here, and the sort of the sash that he's wearing of 7-in-1, and the ludicrousness of that, if that's a word. Great, you just nailed it. I wanted more of it. I knew it was a good ashcan when it was like 9 pages or 8 pages, and I'm like, no,
6 pages.
Oh, 6 pages. Oh, there's a bonus treatment. There's some bonus sketch art at the back of it, which I always appreciate. But yeah, I immediately wanted more. So that you left us hanging, and I think that's a good little kind of tease into where's episode 3 of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. I need more. I just think that was a well-placed nice little 6-page tease, if you will. You tickled a feather.
So there will be, since we have already well surpassed our goal, there's going to be number 2 of this, which you can get through the Kickstarter, the current one for Snow White Zombie number 3. And I plan to, as I continue to run Kickstarters and hopefully continue to overfund, I'll be able to produce enough of this to work it into its own single issue comic, and maybe if people like it enough, spin it off into its own series. But Jack will be weaving back in with Swaza starting around issue 5, which I just finished writing, and I'm really excited about.
Excellent. What's the so that's where I was going, is like kind of what's next? Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. What's kind of the timetable? What can we expect? Where's it going? Kickstarter. Give me some where and what's next.
Well, so where the story will go without too many spoilers, and I kind of talk about this in the video on the Kickstarter. We go from, the first issue is a double issue, introduces the characters. Each issue after that is going to be 22 pages, just because I can get that out faster to Kickstarter backers and just keep things running that way. And that way people don't have to wait too long for their comics. Um, what I'm going to do at about 22, I'm going to bend that rule when I feel it's artistically important. So Luana is going to be doing issue 2, issue 3, and issue 4. That'll take us through kind of a cabin in the woods, Evil Dead kind of plot line, by the way. Working in certain fairy tales. Because the horrifying cabin in the woods that they found has been constructed entirely of gingerbread.
Oh, fantastic.
And then from there, I'm switching artists again. I have locked down the artist, and he's doing it right now. I don't want to announce it officially yet, but this is the biggest artist I've worked with yet. Ooh. And you guys are really going to be excited when you hear who it is. And the next period, the art is going to take a bit of influence from the Berserk manga.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so from issue 5, he's going to handle the next major beat in the story, starting with issue 5 and carrying through. Depending upon how that goes and how I'm feeling, he may carry it all the way through to the end of the first arc or the first season, which is the events of the 2-hour play where we meet some new villains. We have a confrontation with Charming's past that I don't want to get into too much. Is a big reveal in issue 4. And we also deal with the fairy that caused all of this. Because
wow. Cool.
Yeah, because it's kind of hinted at both with Blood-Covered King and also the 44-page issue number 1. But all of this was actually caused because Charming forgot to invite a fairy to a birthday party.
Ooh, and nice. It's just someone that was this is all vengeance for that one small thing, that rude thing that happened. Well, that's great. I love that concept. The mother of all fairies. That's going to be sure someone to reckon with.
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Well, fans, listeners, you know me. I only have creators and comics that I truly enjoy. This gets the Sunspots Comics gold seal of approval. Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, created by Brenton Lengel, right here. Where can everyone find you? Where can they get this? $6 for the first issue with how many pages are in there? What was it, 52 pages?
I think it's 44, but there were additional, it was 44 pages of story, and then there's like a bunch of sketches and stuff in the back. So I think, like 52 up by the end of it. Because, we've got sketches of the soon-to-be next villain that you're going to meet in issue 3, which is the big bad Alpha Wolf.
Yes. Can't wait.
We've got Nyx, the Black Fairy. She's going to be one of our arch villains for the first arc. This is an early sketch of the Woodsman by Hondo, and this is Prince Dashing. Oh. There's an evil Prince Charming out there. Yes. And we'll run into him starting sometime after issue 5. So I mean, you get a lot for just that $6.99, and this issue was nominated for 2 Ringo Awards. It's the first comic I've ever done, so I figure that means people like it.
Yes, congratulations, Brenton. It's packed with action. It's gore. It's fun. It's got good humor. It's got an interesting story. Unique characters that you're spending some time with, actually developing and making interesting. And I love just Rapunzel's character. I don't like to spoil, but gold seal of approval from Sunspots Comics. You guys get Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. And Brenton, please, in closing, tell us where they can find you and find everything and get Snow White Zombie Apocalypse.
Sure. So if you want to find me, just Google my name, Brenton, Lengel, Lengel. My website is brentonlengel.com. I am revamping it. It's like 10 years old now. So if you go there and you're like, this looks like a garbage website from 2009, that's why. But I'm revamping that. The Kickstarter is on its Snow White Zombie 1 to 3 Kickstarter. It's running for another 13 days, I think. We're going until December 17th at 8 a.m. We've already raised almost $18,000, and I hope that the listeners can push us past the $18,000 mark. That would be wonderful. Or if it's already past that, please keep going, because everything goes into production, and what I don't use gets rolled over into the next issue. And the artist who's taking over after Luana is a bit more expensive than the people I've worked with in the past. So please help me out there.
You need it. No, I have no doubt that it's going to overfund. And congratulations on the success of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. And good luck in the future on the OW title, which I'm available as a consultant if needed.
That sounds really good.
I'm available. But thank you, Brenton, for coming on. And please, everyone, listen to his words, follow his stuff, and read Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. You will not regret it.
Yeah. Also, if you can, subscribe to my YouTube. I'm just search Brenton Lengel on YouTube, and you can find me talking about art, politics, philosophy, and Buddhism.
We're gonna put this on here, right? This whole thing.
Yeah.
On there, YouTube. Great. I'll be looking forward to watching this. Thank you, Brenton. And Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure, a joy to read. I genuinely am enjoying it. I can't wait to read more. And I accidentally sent you my address 14 times in case those posters, anything you want to send me, I'll take it. But Brenton, have a great rest of the day, and thank you so much. And you got me as a fan for life. I'm going to just be tuning into whatever you do. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've been listening to your podcast as well, and I've been really impressed. And thank you for taking an interest in the book. As an artist, it means the world to me that people care about what I'm doing.
Oh, synergy. It all comes together on Snow White Zombie Apocalypse from everything, like I said, and it's a rarity. So thank you, man. And let's talk again soon. I'd love to have you on again. Maybe after the third issue or fourth issue comes out, I'll be hitting you up. Let's get you back on here and talk more about it.
Great, and then I'll be able to announce my artist for issue 5.
Come on for that. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Brenton. Have a great night, and again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.